I'm Leo for Kit Guru.
I'm Luke for Kikaru.
I'm choosing the topic here. Luke, do you want to discuss the American election or mobile processors?
Mobile processors, please. Processors, my word.
Excellent.
Oh my god, my heart rate's just shot through the roof. Right, quickly, processors, where we at?
So, I had a briefing with Intel over Skype. What day is it? It's Tuesday today.
Uh,
Last Friday, it was UK time, 4 p.m. because that's morning in West Coast America, so the time zones really muck things up. So I was briefed afternoon Friday for a thing where the NDA lifted Monday afternoon, which is first thing in the morning West Coast, i.e., over the weekend is when this piece was meant to be written or done or whatever. And then they sent through this presentation, and I had a word with Luke, and I didn't write it up or do a video. And the reason is because I think Intel was trying to pull the wool over my eyes. The subject was benchmarking of mobile processors, which is why I joined the briefing. I assumed it'd be Tiger Lake. And what it actually became was we, Intel, know what we're doing, and AMD are a bunch of blithering idiots. They did not use the word blithering or the word idiot or idiots,
Only
but it
for
was
legal
implied.
terms, I guess. That's the only
Yes,
reason.
yes. In my opinion, I believe. I'll send over the slides to Luke so he can put some of them on the screen for this video. But the gist of it is they were showing a bunch of benchmarks, which were canned benchmarks. So it was Web Expert and it was Sysmark, I think, and other sort of canned stuff. The firm behind those being Principal Technologies. And if you rewind 2 years to the launch of i9 1900K, there was a whole thing then when inadvertently or otherwise, Principal Technologies basically eviscerated AMD Ryzen by accidentally mucking things up and made Intel look good. So whenever I see Principal Technologies on anything, I go, I'm going to look at this a bit carefully now. So if we park all of those benchmarks to do with, what was it, exporting docs to PDF and things like
Yeah,
that,
that's right. So PowerPoint to PDF, which is a valid
that's,
use case, but I mean, come on.
but come on. And you park all of these benchmarks that should be flying across your eyes at this very moment. And you move on to the thing of when you benchmark, does it matter if you're using mains power or battery power? Because most people use laptops on battery, and you go, I cannot argue with that. Battery power, good. And then you look into these benchmarks and go, huh? And then you look at this weird analysis they've got of two AMD mobile Ryzen 4000 parts, leaving aside the fact that they call them both Ryzen 7, one's actually Ryzen 9, putting that to one side. And they're saying, look here, AMD does it wrong, or they imply that, because they don't kick up into a higher gear and suck more power and run faster for about 8 seconds into a run. And in our benchmarks, that's bad. And you go, okay. And if you look at these slides, you'll notice two distinct things. One is there's no Intel for comparison. And two is there's no mention of battery life. And I looked at these things and I thought, that seems a bit peculiar. And I fired off a couple of questions and I've not had answers. And I sent them over to Luke and said, what do you think about this? And Luke said, what the hell are they doing? And the upshot is that these charts, which look like, well, Intel's obviously having a dig because they would be, but it looks to me as though AMD's made a choice.
But yeah, you make a really interesting point. And basically, this entire slideshow that you sent me, or this PDF that you sent me, it comes across as kind of sour. So instead of focusing on what we're good at and how we do things differently, whether that's AVX 512, like we've heard in the past, or the AI X, Y, and Z, like we've heard in the past, which is justifiable, you know, Intel's good at that. It's just a case of, no, this is why AMD is bad. And it's just this bizarre point, isn't it? I think Gamers Nexus did it quite well a few months ago, didn't they? Where they came along and said, Intel launches an AMD processor. And I guess this briefing kind of says that because the charts are all AMD processors. Where's the Intel for comparison?
Mm.
And there was
This
just
is very strange. It is also a bit peculiar because, in fairness to Intel, the disclosure about what they're looking at, what the models of the laptop are, what the specs are, is very, very, very good indeed. So they basically, the gist of it is they took 5 Intel laptops and 5 AMD laptops, took them out of the box, apparently didn't do anything apart from change screen brightness, and then they ran various benchmarks. Now, you have to assume they selected the various laptops very carefully because they'd be fools not to. But it does actually seem to be quite representative of the models that are out there. And one interesting thing is one of the 5 Intel laptops is a NUC. It's a NUC that launched, I think, the previous day. In other words, a NUC that's not a mains power box, but a laptop. And as far as I can see, it's a laptop that's a complete laptop bar the storage and therefore the Windows installation. It's their new Era thing. So Era is what Ultrabook used to be. And so it has to be touchscreen, it has to be this, has to be that. It's got fast memory. It looks like quite a decent part. Not available to us, the buying public, only to partners, OEMs in the trade. So the fact that they're including one of their own laptops in their selection, and that's got far and away the biggest battery as well, is interesting to see. Not unreasonable, but it's not even a true partner thing. It's not like a Dell or an HP or whatever. It's their own blooming laptop. So there's that. And look at these charts, and you're going, okay, and now hit me with a kill shot. And it doesn't land.
I think on your battery point, it'd be funny to see AMD respond to this by taking their own reference platform and just chucking a 100 watt hour battery in there and say, there you go, look, we're better.
Well, provided you can travel with a laptop, you don't run into some sort of problem with it being too many, not that we travel, but when we can travel again, you don't have too many milliamp hours and you don't get stopped at security. And provided it's not suddenly 3 kilos for a thin and light, what do I care if it's got a bigger battery and that's how you got the battery life? That's fine by me. There's many ways to slice that particular, whatever the word is in the analogy. So AMD, that Asus ROG G14 that I saw back in March, I think, a long time ago now.
Yeah.
It won every award going. It was absolutely fabulous. And the fact it ran on RTX 2060 graphics rather than integrated graphics, it's a fact. But the processor side of it, mind-blowing. Battery life, thumbs up. And it seems like it's left Intel scarred even now. It really does. Now, there's two things. What I always ask myself when I get something like this come along, so Intel did that Rocket Lake thing before Zen 3 Ryzen 5000 launched. And that was they shot themselves in the foot, reloaded, and shot the other foot. It was a terrible move. But it was clearly intended to try and take some shine off Zen 3, and it failed utterly. But there's not a launch coming. So why have they done this benchmarking laptop thing now? I have no idea why they did this thing now.
Your guess is as good as mine. I have no idea.
Tiger Lake was technically launched, but it's not really on sale yet. It's kind of happening. So it's almost like it's because you've got a laptop there, I believe, the Lenovo that I showed here briefly when I did that Tiger Lake preview a little while back.
That's correct. Yeah. I also have one of the Intel Evo laptops, which will be an interesting comparison point. Yeah.
Fine. Well, that's this. So what Intel will be saying to you is, be sure when you benchmark that you benchmark both with mains connected and mains disconnected. Now, obviously, when we typically at Kickguru do gaming laptops, so your 15.6 inches, your 3 to 4 kilo kind of models, with 230 watt or 330 watt power adapters, and we run those when we're doing gaming on the power, because if you don't, they run at a crawl. These are different animals. These are laptops that you do indeed use on battery. No argument whatsoever. And the fact that the Tiger Lake preview I did, it was an MSI model, was excellent. Really, really, really good. But I was not allowed to do battery testing. And the thing is, subsequently, it's become quite clear that Intel is jacking up the PL1, PL2 for these Tiger Lakes. They're running at quite a healthy clip, shall we say, quite a bit of speed, and that takes a bit of power. So they are thin and light. They can't, they don't overheat or any such, but they burst to high speed. And going back to what you're saying about undervolting, warmth up to 90 something Celsius, and response impressive. But the fact I was not allowed to test battery Makes me wonder about the battery life.
When you say not allowed to test battery, do you mean the battery life as in how long it would run?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of bizarre in itself. I just found this whole section of slides just really weird. And it raises some interesting points. So this is where I'm going to add my opinion here, is on actual use cases. Now, Intel collects this data. I mean, if I just have a quick look. Here you go. So data collected from 1.5 million laptops regarding application usage. And the survey was conducted across US, PRC, which is People's Republic of China, I believe, and D, so I'm guessing Germany, and 1,300 responses. So as far as I'm concerned, that's a pretty good survey.
Yeah,
But
just because I noted that I wasn't going to bring it up, but just divide the one number by the other number. How many devices and how many respondents?
So 1,300 responses and 1.6 million laptops. So they say in each respondent has got like, what, 1,100, 1,200 laptops.
Well, I reckon. So therefore, you're talking presumably big corporations.
So I mean, is this you? Who else has got? Wow.
Well, that's
Okay.
the point. But if you go back to your use case, so if you take those various slides about, as you said, if you're converting things to PDF and such like, and then you're looking at in your organization where you've got 1,100 or 2,000 or whatever, because you're going to have some small organizations, some very large. So if you've got 10,000 laptops and you do a lot of conversion to PowerPoint or a lot of conversion to PDFs, like, well, I don't. I just don't.
Do you know what? You've raised actually a really good point, and I actually missed that point.
I don't like the way you keep saying that as it's a surprise.
Look, I'm from Wales. I always sound surprised. It's just the way I am. But no, I'm not surprised. You raised several good points. You called the AMD graphics card many months ago that TSMC was going to give them the goods, and I think you've called this one here. But you raise a really good point, because that implies if you're talking over 1,000 laptops on average, that's big corporation. I'd say that in the UK classification, I think that would go above SME. That would go to mid-sized corporation at least. And in mid-sized corporation, it doesn't really matter what industry you're working in. You are going to be doing a mix of just mundane, quite frankly, monotonous tasks, whether it's updating timesheets on Excel or writing boring reports on Word or dealing with a PowerPoint for clients, just basic tasks. Whereas, a few hours of the day, you might be running CAD or 3D simulations or video editing. Yes, but you're also going to be doing these tasks. Whereas if you flip that up to perhaps guys like us, where a significant proportion of our day could be editing videos or people playing games or something that's really demanding, really high end, we're not really going to feature in a survey like that because we don't have 1,200 laptops in our corporation. But is our opinion... Yeah. You're like PC world there, aren't you?
Yeah, correct. But this is the irony of the thing, because one of those slides shows mail merge. Now, apart from the fact, well, mail merge of what? It's like, well, I absolutely, definitely don't do that. And the idea that if you run our laptop on battery rather than on mains, it's going to do it in 35 seconds rather than 45 seconds or vice versa. It's like, okay. Whereas you said quite correctly, whereas if you're editing video, rather you're outputting a video and you finish doing it, and it does it in 15 minutes rather than half an hour, that's significant. In which case, pass me my 8-core Ryzen, thank you very much, and that'll crunch that will.
I'm all for save small bits to look at the bigger picture. So if you can save 30 seconds here, 40 seconds there, 20 seconds there, fine, absolutely. But realistically, in your day of work, if you're saving, 15 seconds or whatever, doing tasks which realistically are just going to get done in the background. I mean, a mail merge. Do you sit there and watch the mail? I don't even know what that means. I just use my phone for emails. I honestly don't know what that means. Seriously. Whereas when you're outputting a video, or when you're ingesting footage, or when you're scrolling your 3D model, when you're waiting for a simulation to complete, to change your CAD, when you're doing all these, or waiting for your code to compile or come back, or whatever you're doing, that's stuff that takes a long period of time, and you are going to notice 5, 6, 7 minutes. You are going to notice the difference between wasting your time grabbing a cup of coffee or having it done quite quickly. But that just seems to be completely missing from the survey for some reason, shall we say. Except Cinebench. There's reference to Cinebench, and funny enough, they say that AMD wins.
Well, exactly, and it's saying that Cinebench, AMD, it runs the same, or AMD runs the same whether it's on battery or mains. In other words, it kicks into life and gets going. Which, when was it you had a conversation with AMD? Which of the briefings to do with it takes a lot of work to do little, or it's hard doing nothing, whatever the
Yeah.
quote was.
So that was the quote. I think it was actually, it's quite difficult doing nothing sometimes, or
Sounds
something along
right.
those lines. It was to do with the laptop briefing. So they were highlighting how sometimes if your laptop is in one particular power state, it might be proficient or pertinent to go to a different power state, but it costs power to move to
Mm.
that power state. So if you go from a high power state to a low power state, it costs power to do that because you have to write the stuff to memory, to cache, you have to do in and out for the operation queue and X, Y, and Z. So if you're going to do that and then jump straight back to the other power state, that's wasted energy. It's actually perhaps better to just flatline in that higher power state so that you don't get those efficiency losses.
Now,
And
the
this,
thing is that when we've talked about this in the past, Intel's talked about this in particular in the past, because let's face it, AMD hasn't been mobile for years, essentially. They were talking in terms of milliseconds, as in between keystrokes, they would say their laptops could change power states, because as you, the human, are going, duh, 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 the laptop's going bored, bored, waiting, waiting, and it's switching states literally between keystrokes. This is showing, or rather, this Intel data is showing a delay of 8 seconds, which is forever. So if AMD had cocked it up, you'd be looking at, I don't know what, 0.2, 0.3 of a second would be monumental. 8 seconds means they've really deliberately done this. In other words, it's only after that period of time it's going, oh, I see, it's a big job. Guess I better get going then. This is 8 seconds in this context is a lifetime.
absolutely. And I think that raises a good point. So this is almost like a case of Intel saying AMD does it a different way.
Mm.
AMD does it a different way, therefore they're wrong. And it's just like, come on. I mean, maybe their way is less efficient. Maybe it's not as good. Maybe what Intel is saying is perfectly correct for the use cases they're highlighting. But it just seems like a bit of a childish way of displaying it, quite frankly. And maybe that's not the correct word. My English language skills aren't superb. But I think something like that is perhaps a reasonable way to describe it. And it raises a good point, actually. If you've got a long workload that really needs your laptop to kick into gear, do you mind if it takes 8 seconds for it to kick into gear? If I'm exporting my video that takes 20 minutes, do I care that it takes 8 seconds to kick into gear? Or am I happy about the battery life savings that, in theory, that gives me over a longer period of time? Well, perhaps the latter in my case.
Perfectly possible. In fact, your point there, perhaps AMD is doing it correctly. Because we have such short memories, forget Intel's 50-year, whatever it is, 60-year history. If we literally look at the last 3 years, it's almost like if you're saying that Intel does it this way and AMD does it this way, well, that might be the correct way of doing it. Would never have said that in the past. Would have gone, oh, I'm not so sure about that. Now it's like the AMD way. Well, there we go. Thank you very much. And that's a huge change in mindset, monumental change in mindset. So Intel in this presentation is clearly saying, you see these differences. We're not going to say what you should think, but you know what you should think. And what we're meant to think is, oh, yes, AMD gets it wrong. And instead of thinking, okay, no, not that. And why are you doing this thing now? What's happening in the near future? And I don't have an answer to that. It really burns me. I think it is because Tiger Lake reviews are going to be happening soon, even though we should have had samples in the past month or two. I think they're going to start coming through, and this is their way of saying, make sure you pull the cord, check it on battery.
And yeah, I think you could be right. And to be fair, it is a fair point. I guess we should be doing some testing on battery, but that doesn't discredit the performance on the power adapter either. And this is another point I said to you. If I'm like, it's fine saying, well, saying, okay, you get a higher loss of performance when you move into battery with AMD according to their graphs. Yeah. And okay, that's fine. But if I think about my own personal usage and usage of the people that I used to work with in an engineering or a research environment, when you're on battery, you're typically doing stuff that is relevant for battery. So you might be out and about. You might be doing, I don't know, a bit of photo editing, a bit of Excel. You might be doing some charts or some writing or some, reading some PDFs. When you're doing your real high-end stuff, so simulation, 3D rendering, video export, me personally, I chuck the power adapter in because I want the full performance. And I know what they're saying is, yeah, we can give you the full performance. But how long is that going to take? If I get full performance for an hour and then the battery runs out and I've still got 2 hours of rendering to do, that ain't good. If I get full performance for 3 hours, but my simulation's got another 4 hours and I have to run around looking for the charger, I ain't doing that. And in a real workflow, in my use case, for example, anything high end like that, I stick the power adapter in.
Funny thing is that for many years we had those "I'm a PC, I'm a Mac" adverts going on, and Apple always managed to gloss over the fact, because it was, hey, we're great for video, we're great for photos, great for music. They always glossed over the fact that PCs are great for gaming. And the thing with this Intel presentation is there's no gaming in there. And if they basically want to say, Intel, our laptops are great for mail merge, it's like,
So is my phone, and I don't even know what mail merge is. Seriously, what? Like, I don't even know what mail merge is. But Thunderbird keeps on telling me to do something, and I just click cancel every time. But it's just, that's how unimportant it is to me. And I'd say I'm not, a typical user from like an office or big corporation environment, but I'm not I'm not a user who should be excluded in this scenario, I don't think.
well, I think we can wrap this one up. I hope you enjoyed those Intel slides, and we can agree Luke is not usual, and he does clearly feel excluded.
Well, cheers for that, Leo. Bringing it back, one point I do want to make, so that this doesn't come across like a complete bash Intel. In regards to, like you said, clock speeds and the speed at which they change the action of the clock, basically, Intel still deserves a lot of credit for the way that, like you said earlier, the PL1 and the PL2 works. I still think that is a smart way of doing it. And I remember asking these questions to AMD because the Ryzen mobile chips, they have, good frequency, whatever, but you don't get a massive surge in frequency like you do with the Intel chips when you're under really light load operations or when you're in a small time period for bursty workloads. I still think that's a smart way of doing it. If that then means you compromise your all-core speed, then obviously it comes down to individual preference and the cooling system of the laptop and the battery of the laptop. But I still think giving you maximum performance, even at the cost of thermals and of power for that compact period of time, is perhaps a smart way of doing it. What I don't particularly like is them pointing the finger and saying, nope, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, because it disagrees with the way that we do things. I don't think that's very healthy.
That's a better title for the video. You're quite correct. Intel Evo, Kings of Bursty Workloads. I like it a lot.
Let's go with
Let's
that.
wrap this one up.
So I've been Luke Hill for Kicker. Thank you for watching.
And I've been Remote Leo.
Let us know what you think in the comments section down below. Do you use a laptop? How do you use a laptop as well? We actually had an email chain a few weeks ago internally, didn't we? And it was interesting just in our team how people's opinions and perceptions, and I just whacked my microphone, whoops, how people's use cases for laptops are very different just in our small team. So be really interested to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Check back for more, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Check out the written page on the Kicker website, that helps us out. See you in the next one.